The observation deck of the giant starship Invictus was loud and full of activity. Large, blue-skinned warriors clapped each other on the back and laughed deep, rumbling laughs. In the middle of it all was their leader, a massive Vexian named Jax. He had thick, bony ridges on his forehead and a voice that boomed across the room. He pointed a thick finger at the huge screen that showed a live battle happening on the planet below. It was not a real battle with real deaths, but a very realistic training exercise, a war game. The different species of the Galactic Federation used these games to test each other's strength and tactics. On the screen, a group of human soldiers from Earth were losing. Badly. "Look at them," Jax laughed, and the warriors around him laughed with him. "They are so slow. Their guns shoot little pieces of metal. Our shields stop those easily. They have no plan. They are like children playing at war." Next to him, a slender, sharp-faced warrior named Rin nodded. Rin was from a species called the Kalath, known for their speed and cunning. "The Federation was weak to let them join, even just for a trial period," Rin said, his voice a quiet hiss. "Their world has some useful rocks, that is all. They are not true warriors." Down on the planet, the human soldiers were being surrounded. Their vehicles were being hit by simulated plasma fire and exploding into digital flames. Their positions were being overrun by the faster, better-armed Vexian troops. High above the planet, on the human command ship called the Dauntless, the mood was tense and quiet. The only sounds were the beeping of computers and the hushed voices of the crew. They were watching the same disaster unfold on their own screens. Standing in the center of the command bridge was Captain Lee Jun. He was a young man to be in charge of a starship, but he stood very straight and still. His hands were clasped tightly behind his back. His face showed no emotion as he watched the blue and red icons representing his forces blink out, one by one. His second in command, Commander Park Suman, stood beside him. She was watching him more than she was watching the screen. Her brow was furrowed with worry. "Captain," she said, her voice low but firm, "the report from the ground is not good. Our left side has collapsed. The computers predict we will lose almost everyone if we stay like this. We need new orders." Captain Lee Jun did not turn his head. His eyes stayed fixed on the main screen, where the Vexian forces were closing in like a blue wave. "The order has not changed, Commander," he said, his voice calm and even. "The formation is to hold. Tell them to hold their position," Suman wanted to argue. She could see no point in this. It was a slaughter. But Jun was the captain. She turned and relayed the order, her heart heavy. Back on the Invictus, Jax and his warriors were enjoying the show. "Look at their leader," Jax roared, pointing at the feed from the Dauntless that showed Captain Jun standing motionless. "He does nothing. He just watches his people lose. He is not a commander. He is a statue." The word statue spread through the room, followed by more laughter. The story of the human captain who froze during battle would soon spread across the galactic networks. Videos of Jun's still figure were paired with videos of his soldiers being defeated. The humans were being mocked by everyone. When the war game finally ended, the results were as bad as expected. The human forces had a 98% casualty rate. It was a complete and total defeat. Later on the Dauntless, the crew was sad and angry. They moved slowly, their heads down. They had trained hard, and they had failed in front of the entire galaxy. Some of them shot dark looks towards the captain's quarters as they worked, but Captain Jun was not in his room. He was in the ship's library, a quiet room filled with data screens. He was not reading about famous battles or new weapons. On the screen in front of him were very old words translated from an ancient language. The title of the book was Hagakure. It was a very old book about the way of the samurai, the ancient warriors of Japan. The door slid open, and Commander Suman walked in. She looked tired. "Jun," she said, using his first name now that they were off duty. "The crew, they are confused. The news from Earth is bad. People are asking why you didn't do anything. They are saying you were too scared to act." Jun finally looked away from the screen. He looked at Suman, and for the first time she saw a deep thoughtfulness in his eyes. "It is not about being scared, Suman," he said. "My great-grandfather was a man who loved history. He was especially interested in the samurai. He taught me that their greatest strength was not in attacking first. It was in being still. It was in waiting and watching and understanding." He turned the screen towards her. It showed a complex diagram of a Vexian warrior's energy shield. "If you attack wildly, without knowing your enemy, You will fail, June continued. We did not know the Vexians. We only knew they were strong, so in the game I ordered our forces to hold, to take the attack, to watch. He called up the recording of their defeat. He slowed it down, frame by frame. Look here, he said, pointing. See how the Vexian shield flashes when it is hit? It is strong, but for a very, very short time after a hit it has to reset. It is weak then. He pointed to another part of the recording showing the Vexian troops moving. And see how they fight? They all run forward together screaming. It is meant to scare the enemy, to make them panic and run. They have one way of fighting. They do not know how to fight an enemy who does not run. Suman stared at the screen, beginning to understand. You were not just watching them beat us. You were studying them. Yes, June said, a faint, hard smile touching his lips for the first time. The galaxy has shown us its fist. They think we are weak because we do not swing our fist wildly like they do, but we have been learning. Now we know their rhythm. We know their weakness. He closed the ancient text on his screen. So what is our next move? Suman asked, feeling a new hope. June's face became calm and still again. Now, he said, we wait. We let them keep laughing. When the time is right, they will see that a stone does not need to move to break a wave. The mood on the Dauntless was heavy and quiet. The ship floated in its docking bay, a place of shadows and echoes. Crew members moved through the wide hallways with slow steps. They did not look at each other. They spoke in low voices, if they spoke at all. The shame from the war game was like a thick fog that filled every room. Everyone knew about the videos. On the galactic information networks, the clips of their defeat were everywhere. The most popular one showed Captain Lee Jun standing perfectly still on his bridge. Next to him, the screen showed his forces being destroyed. Someone had put a funny caption on it. Human Commander, please hold the line. The laughter from 1,000 different worlds felt like a physical weight on the crew. In the mess hall, a young engineer named Kim Min sat pushing food around his plate. He was not hungry. At the next table, 2 other crew members were talking. He just stood there, one of them, a pilot named Choi Hana, whispered. He didn't give a single new order. It was like he gave up. My cousin sent me a message from Seoul, said the other, a technician named Park Dae. He said the news anchors are asking for the captain to resign. They say he embarrassed all of Earth. Kim Min put his fork down. He could not eat. He felt a knot of anger and confusion in his stomach. He believed in Captain June, but he could not understand what had happened. Commander Park Suman heard these whispers as she walked through the ship. She heard the doubt. She felt the sadness. It was her job to keep the crew's spirit strong, and she was failing. She knew where she needed to go. She needed to find the captain. She did not find him in his private room. She did not find him on the command bridge. A computer search told her he was in the ship's archive, a small, quiet room deep inside the Dauntless. It was a place for old records and historical data. Not many people went there. She found him sitting at a single terminal. The main lights were off. The only light came from the screen, which painted his face in a soft blue glow. He was not looking at star charts or battle reports. On the screen were lines of ancient text, next to their modern translations. Suman stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him. He was so focused on the words he did not hear her arrive. His posture was still straight, but it looked different now. It did not look like the frozen panic the galaxy was mocking. It looked like the posture of a man deep in thought, a man searching for an answer in a very old place. June, she said softly, walking into the room. He looked up. His eyes were tired, but they were clear. Suman, I thought you would be resting. How can I rest? She said, pulling up a chair. The crew is falling apart. The whole galaxy is laughing at us. They are laughing at you. She paused. The crew, they don't understand. They think you froze. June leaned back in his chair. He gestured to the screen. My great-grandfather, he began. His name was Lee Myung. He was not a soldier. He was a teacher of history. He was fascinated by one thing above all others, the samurai. Suman looked at the screen. She saw words like Bushido and honor and the way of the warrior. He believed their true power was not in their sword, June explained. It was in their mind. He taught me that a samurai's strength was in his stillness, to stand calm in the middle of a storm, to watch your enemy, to learn his movements, to understand his heart. Only then do you know where to strike. To strike without this knowledge is to fail. He turned to her, his expression serious. In the war game, Sumin, what did we know about the Vexians? We knew they were strong. We knew they had better shields and better guns, that was all. We did not know how they fought. We did not know their patterns, their habits, their pride. He turned back to the terminal and called up the recording of their defeat. The silent, holographic battle filled the space between them. The blue Vexian symbols swarmed over the red human ones. Watch, June said. He slowed the recording. He zoomed in on a single Vexian warrior. The warrior's personal shield glowed brightly. A human bullet hit it and sparked harmlessly. But June froze the image at that exact moment. See? He pointed. The shield flashes white when it is hit. It is very strong. But look at the energy reading right after. A graph on the side of the screen showed a sudden, sharp drop in the shield's power. For 1 millisecond, it is almost zero. It has to recharge. Soman leaned forward, her eyes wide. She had not seen that. No one had. June let the recording play. He showed her the Vexian troops moving. And watch their tactics, he said. They do not spread out. They move as one big group. They scream and charge. It is meant to be terrifying. It is meant to make their enemy turn and run. Their whole strategy is based on causing panic. He looked at Suman. What happens if the enemy does not panic? What happens if the enemy does not run? A slow understanding began to dawn on Suman's face. The charge becomes a mess. They get in each other's way. Their strength becomes a weakness. Exactly, June said, a quiet intensity in his voice. We did not lose that day, Suman. We paid a price for information. We learned. The galaxy thinks we are a joke because we stood still. But in that stillness, we saw everything. We saw their rhythm. We saw their weakness. They were so busy being loud, they did not notice we were watching. He closed the ancient text on his screen. The room was dark again, lit only by the dim emergency lights. So what do we do with this? Suman asked. The hopelessness she had felt was gone, replaced by a new, sharp feeling of purpose. June stood up. Now we prepare. We let them keep laughing. Let them think we are weak and foolish. Their mockery is our best weapon. It makes them overconfident. It makes them blind. He walked to the door and Suman followed him. The galaxy showed us its fist, June said, his hand on the doorframe. They think that is the only kind of strength. We will show them a different kind. We will show them our soul. As they walked out of the archive, the ship felt a little less dark. The fog of shame had not lifted, but Suman now carried a small, bright light of understanding. The captain had not been frozen. He had been patient. And she knew with a sudden, fierce certainty that the galaxy was about to learn the difference. The air on Elysian Orbital was thin and smelled of recycled flowers. It was a space station built for peace, a place where different species met to talk, not to fight. The main hall for the Grand Gala was a giant circle of clear material, showing the endless starry night outside. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved through the room. Some had many legs, some floated in the air, and some were covered in soft fur. Soft, strange music played in the background. Captain Lee Jun and Commander Park Suman stood near a large window, watching the stars. They were dressed in their best formal uniforms. The dark blue fabric was crisp and clean. They did not talk much. They sipped glasses of water and tried to look like they belonged, but they could feel the eyes on them. Whispers followed them wherever they went. The story of the statue captain had reached every corner of the galaxy. A group of tall, slender beings with silver skin glanced their way and then turned their backs, a clear sign of disrespect. A hulking, rock-like creature from a heavy gravity world simply snorted as it walked past, a puff of dust coming from its nostrils. Suman kept her face calm, but her hands were tight around her glass. They are all looking at us, she said quietly to June. Let them look, June replied. His voice was steady. He stood with his usual perfect posture, his back straight, his shoulders relaxed. He was practicing the stillness his great-grandfather had taught him. It was a shield against the mockery. Then, the crowd near the main entrance shifted. A path was cleared as a group of Vexian warriors entered the room. They were led by Admiral Jax. He was even bigger and more imposing in person, his blue skin seeming to glow under the lights, his cranial ridges looking like a crown of sharp bone. He moved through the crowd like a shark through water, his warriors spreading out behind him. Jax's eyes scanned the room. They quickly found the two humans standing alone. A wide, unpleasant smile spread across his face. He changed his course and walked directly toward them. The music seemed to grow quieter. Everyone in the hall was now watching, sensing the coming confrontation. Well, well. Jax's voice boomed, silencing the last of the conversations around them. If it isn't the statue and his shadow, I am surprised to see you here. I thought you would be back on Earth practicing how to stand still. Laughter erupted from his Vexian followers. The sound was harsh and guttural in the elegant hall. June did not move. He turned his head slowly to look at Jax. He said nothing. Jax stepped closer, looming over June. Tell me, Captain, he said, his voice dripping with fake curiosity. Is standing still the secret human tactic? Do you win your battles by boring your enemy to death? More laughter. Suman felt her face grow hot. She wanted to shout, she wanted to defend her captain, but she saw the calm in June's eyes and she forced herself to stay quiet. Jax leaned in even closer. You let your soldiers die in a simulation. What will you do in a real fight? Will you just watch them die for real? This was the worst insult possible. It questioned June's courage and his care for his crew. The room was utterly silent now. Every diplomat, every ambassador, every warrior was waiting to see how the human would respond. Would he get angry? Would he stammer? Would he run away? Captain Lee June finally moved. He did not step back. He took one single small step forward. It was a tiny movement, but in the quiet room it felt huge. He looked up at the massive Vexian, his face a mask of calm dignity. Admiral Jax, June said. His voice was not loud, but it was clear and sharp, like a bell. It carried to every corner of the hall. You are mistaken. Jax's smile faltered for a second. He was not used to being corrected. You mistake patience for paralysis, June continued, his words slow and precise. You mistake discipline for fear. You believe that war is a contest of noise. We believe it is a contest of will. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. The whole galaxy was listening. You see our stillness as weakness. We see your noise as emptiness. You have shown us your strength. You have shown us your power, but you have not shown us your honor. Jax's face began to turn a darker shade of blue. How dare you speak to me of honor, human? You have none. Then let us prove it, June said, his voice still quiet, but now filled with an iron resolve. The Terran Republic formally challenges the Kylos remnant, not to a fleet battle, not to a simulated war game with 1,000 variables. We challenge you to a single combat. A wave of gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd. A duel? It was an ancient, almost forgotten practice. The red sand of the planet Xylos was fine as dust. It swirled in the dry wind, blowing across a wide, flat plain that was surrounded by low, purple mountains. The sky above was a strange shade of orange, lit by two small white suns. It was a silent, empty place perfect for a duel. Today the silence was broken. In the sky, hundreds of small observation ships hovered like silent insects. They were there to watch and to record. Inside those ships, diplomats, generals, and ordinary citizens from all over the galaxy watched their screens. They were waiting for the fight to begin. The story of the human who challenged the Vexian champion was the biggest news in the Federation. In the center of the plain, a large circle had been marked on the ground. On one side of the circle stood the Vexian champion, Korgath the Breaker. He was a giant even for a Vexian. His blue skin was covered in scars. He wore heavy, powered armor that made him look even bigger. In his hands he held a massive weapon called a plasma maul. It was a long handle with a large glowing hammerhead on the end. The hammer hummed with a dangerous energy. It was a weapon made for breaking things, for breaking armor, for breaking bones, for breaking spirits. Korgath shifted his weight from one foot to the other, eager to begin. He looked across the circle at his opponent and let out a low, rumbling laugh. On the other side of the circle stood Captain Li Jun. A wave of confusion went through the observers. The human was not wearing the standard Terran combat armor. He was wearing his formal dress uniform, the same dark blue one from the gala. It was clean and pressed, but it was just cloth. It would offer no protection. In his hands he held a long, curved object in a polished wooden scabbard. It was a katana, a samurai's sword. The commentators on the Galactic broadcast were baffled. "Is this a mistake?" one asked. "The human appears to be armed with a ceremonial artifact. That blade will be useless against Vexian armor. Perhaps it is a symbolic surrender," another suggested. "He knows he cannot win, so he chooses to die with honor." On the bridge of the Dauntless, which was orbiting high above the planet, the crew watched on their main screen. Commander Park Suman stood with her hands gripping the back of the captain's chair. Her knuckles were white. She saw Korgath, a mountain of muscle and metal, and she saw June, a solitary figure in a blue uniform. Her heart was pounding in her chest. Down on the plane, an official from a neutral species stood between the two fighters. He held up a small device. "The rules are set." His voice was amplified across the area. "The fight will continue until one combatant yields, is unable to continue, or is touched by a first blood strike." "Begin!" The official jumped back quickly. The duel had started. Korgath did not wait. He let out a roar that echoed across the plain. It was a sound meant to terrify. He charged forward, his heavy feet kicking up clouds of red dust. He swung the plasma maul in a wide, powerful arc. The weapon glowed brightly as it cut through the air, heading straight for June's head. On the Dauntless, Suman gasped. She wanted to close her eyes, but June did not try to block the maul with his sword. That would have been suicide. Instead, at the very last second, he moved. It was not a big movement. He simply took one smooth step to the side. His body turned slightly. The humming head of the maul missed him by less than a hand's width. It slammed into the ground where he had been standing with a loud thud and a burst of scorched sand. Korgath grunted in surprise. He pulled his weapon back and swung again, this time from the other side. June moved again, another small, precise step. The maul whistled past his chest. The Vexian champion was confused. This was not how his fights usually went. His enemies usually tried to run, or they tried to block, and they were crushed. This human was just moving. He was like smoke. Korgath attacked again and again. He used overhead smashes, horizontal swings, and quick jabs. Each time, June evaded with the same calm, economical grace. He never took a big, jumping step. He only moved just enough for the attack to miss. He did not swing his sword. He kept it held ready in both hands, his eyes locked on Korgath. His breathing was slow and steady. His face showed no fear, no anger, no effort. It was as calm as still water. The observers were silent. This was not the brutal, quick fight they had expected. Minutes passed. Korgath was breathing heavily now. His armor whined as it worked to keep up with his movements. The constant, powerful swings of the plasma maul were using up a lot of energy. He was getting tired, and he was getting angry. "Stand and fight, you coward," Korgath bellowed, his voice cracking with frustration. He swung the maul in a wild, furious circle. June did not respond. He simply sank back into his ready stance, his feet planted, his sword held steady. He was watching. He was learning. He saw the way Korgath's right shoulder dipped slightly before a big swing. He saw how the Vexian's left foot dragged in the sand when he was tired. He was reading his enemy like a book. In the observation ship where Admiral Jax was watching, the mood had changed. The laughter was gone. Jax was leaning forward, his face a mask of confusion and growing worry. This was not right. The human was not fighting, but he was not losing either. He was waiting. What was he waiting for? On the Dauntless, Suman began to understand. She saw the pattern. June was not trying to win the fight quickly. He was letting Korgath lose it. He was letting the giant Vexian use up all his strength and all his anger. He was being the mountain, and Korgath was the storm breaking against him. Korgath, enraged and exhausted, decided to end it. He let out one final deafening roar. He put all of his remaining power into one last devastating overhead smash. He lifted the plasma maul high above his head and brought it down with all his might, aiming to crush June into the sand. It was the same move he had started with. But now it was slower. It was predictable. This time, June did not step to the side. He moved forward. In a blur of motion too fast for most eyes to follow, June dropped his body low. His left hand pushed the scabbard away as his right hand drew the katana in a single silver flash. The movement was called Yaijutsu, the art of the quick draw. He did not swing the sword in a big arc. He made one straight perfect cut as he passed directly under the falling maul, inside Korgath's reach. For a moment, everything was frozen. June was now standing behind Korgath, his body in a low stance. His sword was held out to his side, its polished blade gleaming in the double suns. It was clean. Korgath stood with his maul still embedded in the sand where June had been standing. He blinked. He felt nothing. Had the human missed? Then a sharp, urgent alarm beeped from his armor. A red light on his chest plate began to flash. A thin, perfectly straight line appeared across the center of his armored chest. There was a small spark, a fizzle of electricity, and then the bright blue glow of his personal energy shield flickered and died. The hum of the shield generator stopped. June had not tried to cut the Vexian. He had cut the delicate power conduit on his armor, right over the shield generator core. He had disarmed him in the most complete way possible. June turned slowly. He stood tall again, his sword now point down in the sand, his hands resting on its handle. He looked at the stunned Vexian champion. "Your shield is down," June said, his voice calm but clear across the silent plain. "Your weapon is too slow for close combat. Your stance is unbalanced." He paused, letting the truth of his words sink in for Korgath and for the entire watching galaxy. "Do you yield?" The silence on the plain of Xylos was absolute. The wind had stopped blowing. The red dust settled on the ground. In the sky, the observers in their ships did not make a sound. They were all staring at their screens, unable to believe what they had just seen. Korgath the Breaker stood frozen. He could feel the cool air of Xylos on his skin for the first time. The constant comforting hum of his energy shield was gone. The silence in his own helmet was terrifying. He looked down at his chest. The thin, clean cut in his armor was a mark of incredible precision. The human had not swung wildly. He had placed his blade with the care of a surgeon. He looked at his plasma maul. It was still stuck in the sand, its head dark and inactive now that it was not connected to his powered armor. It was heavy and useless. The human was right. At this close range, it was a clumsy weapon. He felt his body trembling from exhaustion and shock. All his strength, all his rage had been for nothing. The human had not met his power with greater power. He had met it with nothing, with emptiness, and in that emptiness, Korgath had fallen. He looked at the human captain. Li Jun stood waiting, his face calm. He was not celebrating. He was not smiling. He was simply waiting for an answer. There was no mockery in his eyes. There was only a quiet certainty. Korgath had never yielded in his life. He fought until his enemies were broken. But this was different. He was not broken. He was defeated. To fight on would be meaningless. It would be a dishonor to the skill his opponent had shown. Slowly, with a great effort, Korgath released his grip on the handle of his maul. The heavy weapon fell into the red sand with a soft thud. Then the giant Vexian warrior bent his knees. He knelt on the ground before Captain Li Jun. He lowered his head. "I yield," Korgath said. His voice was a rough whisper, but it was picked up by the microphones and carried to every watching ship. The spell was broken. On the bridge of the Dauntless, a cheer erupted. It was a loud, sudden burst of sound from a crew that had been holding its breath for too long. Engineers hugged each other. Pilots jumped from their chairs. Commander Park Suman let out a long, shaky breath. A smile spread across her face so wide it hurt her cheeks. He had done it. He had really done it. In the observation ship of Admiral Jax, there was no sound at all. Jax was staring at the screen, his blue face pale with disbelief. His champion, his unbeatable Korgath, was kneeling in the dust before the human he had mocked as a statue. Jax felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had not just lost a duel. He had been proven wrong in front of the entire galaxy. His entire understanding of strength had been shattered. Down on the plain, the neutral official ran forward. He looked at the kneeling Korgath and then at the standing June. He raised his device. "The duel is over," he announced, his voice echoing. "The victor is Captain Li Jun of the Terran Republic." This time, the silence in the observation ships broke. It was not a cheer, but a wave of excited chatter. The news feeds exploded with activity. The video of the final moment, The single lightning-fast draw and cut was played over and over. The commentators were tripping over their words trying to explain what had happened. "He didn't even try to hurt him," one exclaimed. "It was a display of total control. He targeted the shield generator with one strike." The patience. The human was patient for the entire fight, waiting for that one single moment. The story changed in an instant. The meme of the Terrans who stand and watch vanished. It was replaced by a new image. The still, calm figure of Lee Jun in his blue uniform, standing before the kneeling Vexian giant. The new phrase spread like fire across the networks. The samurai who stood still. Back on the Dauntless, the celebration continued. The crew was laughing and talking, their shame completely forgotten, replaced by a fierce pride. They were not the joke of the galaxy anymore. They were the people of the samurai captain. Suman watched the screen as Jun gave a small, formal bow to the kneeling Korgath. It was a gesture of respect to a defeated opponent. Then he turned and began to walk calmly off the plane, his sword back in its scabbard. He did not look like a man who had just won a great victory. He looked like a man who had simply finished his work. Later, when Jun returned to the ship, the crew lined the hallway to the landing bay. They stood at attention as he walked past. They did not cheer. They did not clap. They gave him silence, the deepest form of respect they could offer. He had taught them the value of stillness. Jun walked to the command bridge. Suman was waiting for him there. "The entire Federation is talking about you," she said, her voice full of wonder. "They are not just calling you a warrior. They are calling you a master. You didn't just beat him, Jun. You redefined the meaning of a fight." Jun walked to his captain's chair. He placed the sheathed katana gently across his knees. He looked out the main viewing screen at the stars. "I did nothing my ancestors did not teach," he replied softly. "He was a powerful storm. I was just a stone." The storm had to eventually pass. The stone did not have to move. The story of the duel on Xylos was like a shockwave. It moved through the Galactic Federation faster than any ship could travel. On every news channel, on every data stream, the same video played. It showed the massive Vexian champion charging again and again. It showed the still calm human in the blue uniform. And it showed the single silver flash that ended the fight without a drop of blood. The laughter was gone. Completely. The old jokes about the statue captain disappeared. In their place, people were using a new name. They called him the samurai who stood still. It was a name spoken with respect and with a little bit of awe. People on 1,000 different worlds looked at humans differently now. They were not the weak, slow species from a backwater planet. They were the people of a deep and powerful philosophy. On the Dauntless, the change was immediate and wonderful. The heavy fog of shame had lifted. When the crew walked the hallways, they stood tall. They looked each other in the eye. They smiled. The engineers worked with new energy. The pilots trained with fresh purpose. They were proud to wear the uniform of the Terran Republic. Captain Lee Jun did not change. He was still quiet. He still spent time alone in the archives, reading his ancient texts. He still stood with the same calm posture on the bridge. But now the crew understood him. They saw his stillness not as coldness, but as strength. They saw his patience not as slowness, but as intelligence. He had given them a great gift, their pride. A few days after the duel, a formal message arrived on the Dauntless. It was from Admiral Jax of the Kylos Remnant. He was requesting a private meeting with Captain Jun. No media. No other officers. Just the two of them. Commander Park Suman was worried. "It could be a trick, Jun. He is proud and you humiliated him." "He might be angry." Jun shook his head. "A warrior like Jax does not use tricks for this. He will come directly, or not at all. I will see him." The meeting was set to take place in a simple, neutral room on Elysian Orbital. Jun arrived first. He wore his regular duty uniform. He did not bring any weapons. He stood by a large window looking out at the stars. The door slid open. Admiral Jax walked in. He was not wearing his full battle armor. He wore a simpler, formal tunic. He looked older than Jun remembered. The usual bluster and anger were gone from his face. He looked tired and thoughtful. The door closed behind him, leaving the two commanders alone. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Jack stood near the door, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at Jun, really looked at him, as if he was seeing him for the first time. Finally, Jax took a slow step forward. "Your warrior." He began, his voice much quieter than its usual boom. He did not fight with anger. I have watched the recording 100 times. There is no hate in his eyes. June nodded slightly. No, there was no hate. There was only the task. Jax frowned, struggling to understand. My people, we fight with fire in our blood. We use our rage to become stronger. It is our way. But your man, he searched for the right word. He fought with clarity. Like he was solving a problem. He was, June said. The problem was not Korgath. The problem was the fight itself. He found the simplest solution. Jax walked over to the window and stood beside June. He looked out at the same field of stars. We have much to learn, the big Vexian admitted. It seemed to be a difficult thing for him to say. We thought we knew everything about war. We thought strength was only one thing, power, noise, force. You have shown us that it is something else, something quieter. He turned to face June. I was wrong to mock you and your crew. It was dishonorable. June accepted this with a slow nod. Understanding is better than an apology. The next week, the Galactic Federation held a full council meeting. The main topic was Earth's application for full membership. Before the duel, everyone knew it was going to be rejected. The humans were seen as too weak, too primitive. But now everything was different. One by one, the ambassadors from different species stood up to speak. The ambassador from the silver-skinned Ilarians, who had once turned their backs on June, now spoke about the value of profound cultural wisdom. The ambassador from the rock-like Gron, who had snorted in disdain, talked about the strategic importance of disciplined tactics. When it was time to vote, the result was not even close. It was unanimous. Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Federation. The reason was not their weapons. It was not their technology. It was their philosophy. They had shown the galaxy a new kind of strength. That evening, June was back on the command bridge of the Dauntless. The ship was moving smoothly through space, heading for a new assignment. The mood on the bridge was focused and peaceful. Suman brought him a report. Full membership opens up new trade routes for Earth. Our scientists will be able to share information with the best minds in the galaxy. It is a new beginning for our people. June looked at the star chart on the main screen. A small blue planet called Earth was highlighted. They did not welcome us for our fists, he said. They welcomed us for our minds. For our spirit, Suman smiled. All because one man knew how to stand still. June thought of his great-grandfather, the history teacher. He thought of the ancient books and the lessons about the samurai. He had shown the galaxy that in a universe full of noise and fury, the most powerful thing could be a moment of perfect, unshakable stillness. The story of the samurai had shaken the stars, and Earth had found its place not by being the loudest but by being the most composed.